Y'all may be seated. All right. The defendant, Danny Goodman, has been accused by grand jury of Union County under the indictment of one count of manslaughter in the first degree, a felony. The defendant, on or about May 12th, 2017, in Union County, Mississippi, did unlawfully and recklessly, under the circumstances, manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, caused the death of Vivian Valavindi, another human being. Contrary to the statements and against the peace and dignity under the state of Mississippi, it is hereby affirmatively declared for the record, upon appearance of the defendant for arraignment and before the court, as how the defendant pleads to the charges, that the state intends that any misdemeanor offenses charged herein each proceeds as a misdemeanor. A person acts recklessly if that person is aware of the disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk that a particular result will occur. The risk must be of such a nature that and degree that disregarding it constitutes a gross, I don't know these words. I'm going to be real with you, like these words are a mile long. The standard of care a reasonable person would observe in the situation. The defendant has entered a plea of not guilty to the charge. That's what it says, but okay. Not guilty to the charge. A plea of not guilty is a denial of every alleged to the prosecution. The court will now submit the case to the jury. You will need to decide based on the law of the evidence presented to you at trial whether the prosecution has prevailed in proving the prosecution's charges against the defendant. The defendant is innocent unless or until the defendant is proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden is on the prosecution to prove the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is doubt based on common sense and reason. Reasonable doubt means an honest and a certainty as to the guilt of the defendant. Reasonable doubt exists when, after careful and impartial consideration of all the evidence in the case, you are not convicted to a moral certainty that the defendant is guilty. Prosecution, you may do your opening statements.
Good morning. My name is Alexandria Robertson, and me and my team will be serving as the prosecution this morning in representation of the state of Mississippi. It is our utmost honor to serve this great state and its citizens this morning. On the night of May 12, 2017, defendant Nathan Goodman's reckless actions behind the wheel of a car resulted in the wrongful death of victim Vivian Villanueva. On conclusion of this case, our team will be asking for a verdict of guilty. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about promoting safety in our state and also teaching our children a lesson that their actions have consequences that cannot be reversed once performed. The prosecution will call 3 witnesses to the stand this morning: the former best friend of defendant Nathan Goodman, a responding sheriff's officer to the night of the scene, and the sergeant of the accident reconstruction team here in Union County. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense may argue that the conditions of the road were unsafe and the defendant were not at fault for having no possession of the phone on the night of the incident. However, the evidence will indicate that the defendant acted with no concern for the safety of the victim, of himself, and of his passengers within his car. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time, for your commitment to your civil duty as jurors and as citizens, and I thank you for your commitment to the pursuit of justice this morning. Thank you.
All right. Defense, your opening statements.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we're here to discuss a matter of great importance. the case of Nathan Goodman, who stands accused of texting whilst driving. However, before we jump into the details of this case, I urge each of you to set aside any preconceived notions or biases that you may have. Instead, let us approach this trial guided solely by the evidence presented before us. Texting and driving is undoubtedly a serious offense with potentially grave consequences. It is a matter of public safety, and the law rightfully takes a firm stance against such behavior. However, it is crucial to remember that every individual is entitled to a fair trial and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. As we proceed, you will hear various accounts and pieces of evidence pertaining to the events in question. It is my duty to challenge the prosecution's case and to ensure that every element is scrutinized with the utmost care. We will examine the circumstances surrounding the night in question, the reliability of any questions asked by law enforcement, and the validity of any other witnesses. In the end, you will see that there is not, in fact, any hard evidence that convicts Mr. Goodman of this alleged crime. My client is not guilty of manslaughter in the first degree on the grounds of circumstantial evidence and false allegations.
The prosecution calls Ms. Jordan Atwood to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Good morning. Would you mind stating your name for the jury?
Jordan Atwood,
Miss Atwood, how old are you?
17.
And are you still in school?
I am.
Where?
West Union Attendance Center.
Are you a senior?
I am.
Miss Atwood, I'd like to ask you some questions today in regards to the night of May 12th, 2017. And would you mind telling me a little bit about your relationship with Nathan Goodman?
Well, we were best friends until he messed it up because he texted my mom something like very inconspicuous, and it got me in trouble.
Do you mind telling the jury what you told your mom?
I can't.
Miss Atwood, what kind of car do you drive?
Red Subaru BRZ.
So were you with the defendant Nathan Goodman within his car on the night of May 12th?
I was.
And what was the plan for that night?
We were gonna go to the lake with some friends from another school.
How would you describe Nathan's driving?
Reckless and distracted.
Do you think there's any reason for that sort of behavior?
Well, I drive a faster car than he does, and I felt like he was trying to one-up me each time we were in the car together.
So how would you describe Nathan and Peyton's behavior on the night of the incident?
Distracted.
What was your location in the car?
I was in the back seat,
And where were the other two?
in the front seat.
Was Nathan in the driver's seat?
He was.
So can you tell me a little bit about text roulette?
We text each other on each other's phones, text different numbers from their phone.
So did the group play text roulette on the night of the incident?
They did, but I didn't.
Whose idea was it?
Nathan's.
Jury, let it be known that my client has identified that Nathan brought up the idea of playing text roulette on the night of the incident. Ms. Jordan, do you have any recollection of the events of the crash?
I can't tell you the events after, but I can recollect the events before.
Do you remember how fast the car was going when you approached River Road?
55 to 65 miles per hour.
And was there any indication that the car was slowing down as you approached the curve?
No.
So right before the crash, did you see the phone in Nathan's hand?
I did.
Are you certain that he was texting?
Yes, I could see the green and blue bubbles on his phone.
So did you say anything to Nathan about this behavior?
I did, but I didn't say it again because I didn't find a need to if I already told him once.
So you mentioned his behavior before.
Yes.
So how did he respond to you upon you making a statement about his behavior?
He told me to chill down and that it was only a game.
What was his attitude?
He was very, rude and
So as you approach the curve of River Road, could you feel the car turn?
No.
Did you receive any injuries because of the crash?
yes, I got a bruise, but I was not majorly concussed.
Do you confirm that you were not concussed?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Atwood.
All right. Prosecution's cross-examination.
Mrs. Atwood, based on what you remember, what happened on the night of May 12th?
Our initial plan was to go visit some friends at the lake, and they were from another school, so we left pretty early. And from what I know, Nathan and Peyton were texting on each other's phone, and then Nathan grabbed his phone and texted his mom and his other friend, Landry.
Okay. Were you concerned about Mr. Goodman's driving that night?
I was
How fast do you think he was going?
55 to 65 miles per hour.
Okay. Could you see pretty clearly everything that was happening in the front seat?
Not while I was laying down, I couldn't.
Okay. Do you think your state of mind was clear when you made statements to Mr. Goodman in front of the police officer after the accident?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it says in your statement, my memory is pretty foggy for the rest of the night. I can't really remember all of what we said.
I can remember it before, but not after.
Okay. Not after the accident. Okay. Did you and Miss Vivian ever have any type of relationship?
We did.
Okay. Based on the last few months, do you think Miss Vivian was fully adequate to drive?
No.
What was Mr. Goodman doing before the crash?
He was texting.
Okay. Were you and him arguing?
No.
Okay. Well, excuse me. Let me find the statement. Don't mind that question. And you remember everything pretty clearly, correct?
Yes.
Miss Jordan, how would you describe your relationship with Mr. Goodman?
We were good at first, but then he got pretty jealous because I drove a faster car than he does, and he was always trying to be better than me because of it.
Okay. Were you still mad at Mr. Goodman for the text he sent to your mom that night?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go back to the moment of the accident. Who called 911? It was Miss Peyton Piper, or Miss Drew, or what's your name? Okay, Peyton Piper. And soon after that, and how soon after the accident did she call 911? Right after?
No.
It wasn't right after? Well, she'll testify, and she said in her statement that she did immediately call 911 right after the accident. So how soon do you think right after is? 30 seconds or less?
Probably more.
More than 30 seconds? Is right after?
Maybe less.
How do you define right after?
Not right after the crash, but maybe like a few seconds after.
Okay. Is this your sworn affidavit?
Yes.
Can you read lines 3 through 5 like that to right there?
Right here?
Start right there at line 3 and finish right there.
Okay. Right before the crash, though, I know Danny was texting. I'm sure of what I saw, because even though it was dark, I could see the light from the cell phone screen in Danny's hand, with the green and blue bubbles that you see when you open up text messages.
Is it your testimony here today that you witnessed Mr. Goodman texting while driving right before the crash?
Yes.
Okay. Can you now read lines 5 through 7? Just the rest of that paragraph.
When I called Danny on it, Danny got kind of mad and said, "Just chill out, Aziz or Jordan. My mom and Landry are bugging me." I couldn't believe Danny was still playing text roulette out on this scary road.
Okay, thank you. And you're sure that you're remembering the events of May 12th clearly today as you testify under oath?
Yes.
You testified earlier that he was driving about 55 to 60 miles per hour. Are you still pretty confident that he was going that fast?
Yes.
How many minutes are there in an hour?
60.
Okay, so if you're going 60 miles an hour, that's traveling 1 mile per minute, or half a mile every 30 seconds. It's basic math, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you read these text messages? These are the last text messages that Mr. Goodman sent at 8:48. Can you read that one right there that he sent to his mom?
Yes. Hi, Mom. I promise I won't be out too late, but we are only going to Buddy's for some burgers. Love you.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware there's testimony given that proves the 911 call was placed at 8:53 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. How many minutes are there between 8:48 and 8:53? You take your time. Think about it.
8:48 and 8:53.
Yes. It's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes. 8:48, 8:53. 5 minutes. You testified earlier that Mr. Goodman was traveling approximately, let's say, 60 miles an hour, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You testified earlier that the 911 call was placed right after the accident, correct?
Yes.
And we've established that a car can travel approximately at least half a mile per minute if traveling at over 30 miles an hour. So it is safe that the car Mr. Goodman was driving traveled at least 2.5 miles after the last text message was sent before being involved in the accident. Correct?
I don't get that question.
Okay. And you also testified that Mr. Goodman was texting right before the accident. However, the timestamp concludes that the last message was sent 5 minutes before the accident. Is it possible that you don't remember the order of events as accurately as you first claimed? And may I remind you that you're under oath?
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection. How is this an objection? I'm trying to establish a time frame here.
It's badgering the witness for information. She stated clearly that she remembered Mr. Goodman driving from 55 to 65 miles per hour. This is just trying to get her for information.
Your Honor, our witness has also testified that her memory of the crash, like post the crash, is unclear, although her memories before are clear to her. She was not obviously concussed according to our doctor's notes, and the defense attorney is asking her questions post the crash, although her testimony swears that her memory is fuzzy post crash.
Sustained.
No
Thank you,
further
Your Honor.
questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I wish to cross-examine or re-examine
Go ahead.
Ms. Atwood. Can you tell me a little bit about your view of the front seat from the back seat?
While I was laying down, I couldn't see really anything, but while I was up, I could see everything.
Ms. Atwood, could you tell me a little bit about your conversation post the crash up to what you remember?
I remember telling Nathan that he should slow down, and he didn't listen to me, so I didn't find a need to tell him again.
That conversation was inside the car.
Yes.
Do you remember any of your conversation with Deputy Cole?
No.
Do you remember anything that was said post the crash?
Rephrase that bit.
Do you remember anything that was said after the crash?
I remember him saying that it was just a game, and then it went black after that.
Was that conversation between you and the defendant or between the defendant and the officer?
Between the defendant and the officer.
No further questions. Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution.
Defense, direct examination.
Miss Atwood, you testified earlier that you could not feel the car being turned, correct?
I couldn't feel it until he jerked the wheel.
So he did indeed turn right. He swerved right, correct? Your Honor, may I present Exhibit 1 before the jury?
particular one. Or,
I'm gonna hand it to the bailiff. May it be known to the jury that vehicle 1 is Mr. Nathan's car and vehicle 2 is Miss Vivian's car. So, as you can see in the admissible evidence, that Miss Vivian's tire marks were going into Mr. Nathan Goodman's lane, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it would make sense that he would swerve right to avoid the collision.
He wasn't paying attention to when it happened. He
Ms.
was
Jordan, answer the
texting.
question. It would make sense. Did he swerve right at any point before the wreck?
Yes.
He did swerve right.
Yes.
So it's obvious that he swerved right to avoid hitting Miss Vivian.
Objection, opinion? Objection.
opinion on what? In her affidavit, it says that she felt a hard right swerve and her cheek was bruised. Overruled.
Get that for me. Thank you. Can you please read lines 11 and 12?
Then it suddenly felt like we were swerving hard to the right. I remember being thrown hard to the left, like the car was making a hard right turn. Then we crashed.
And you testified earlier that you could not feel the car being turned, but your statement clearly contradicts that. No further questions, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
So to put a time frame on the defense, would you mind clarifying that you felt the car turn because of the swerve, not to make the curve, correct?
Correct.
Let that be known to the jury that my client has clarified that the swerve was that the turn of the car was not to make the curve. It was to swerve out of the way of
Objection.
the other vehicle.
Are we supposed to go to the next witness?
Yeah.
Maybe known to the jury that none of these questions she just asked mattered.
And none of the questions that he asked before mattered. Because after
Yes, it did.
my
Hey,
re-examination, we were supposed to call the
Let
next
it be known to the
witness.
jury that the
Order,
prosecution does
order,
not know
order. Chill
anything
out.
about the law.
Order.
Objection, badgering the attorney.
Overruled. Please badger the attorney.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls its next witness. Thank you, Miss Atwood, for your service.
Yes.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls Maggie Cole to the stand.
Thanks.
Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Good morning, Ms. Cole. Could you please state your full name and occupation for the court, please?
Maggie Cole, and I'm a Union County Sheriff's Officer.
Okay. How long have you been in the department for?
A little less than 2 years.
Okay. Would you say that you feel decently comfortable with your position there? Okay. Getting straight on into it, do you think you could describe in detail your night as you were on the night of May 12, 2017, please?
Yes. So I was on patrol that night, and then I got radioed to a wreck on River Road. So I immediately responded to the wreck and saw that there were 2 cars crashed. The Volvo was facing west, I think, and there was a Volkswagen that was facing south, I think. And they were both pretty smashed up, and there were 3 teenagers, and they were on the side of the road.
Sorry, I don't mean to stop you.
Mhm.
Are you aware that those 3 teenagers are the witnesses in the stand today?
Yes.
Right. Let it be known that the 3 witnesses that she is talking about are in the court with us today.
And they were on the side of the road, and then there was another older lady in her car that was obviously pretty smashed up like the other one. But they were able to get out. However, her car did seem a little older, so she couldn't really get out because she was older. She was bleeding from her mouth and her nose pretty bad. So I instructed the teenagers to go sit down on the side of the road until I could get with them, and I radioed for backup. And I went over there to check with the older woman. I identified later as Miss Vivian. She was 88 years old, and she's from Mountainville. And she was talking to me, and she tried to kind of look at me and say something, but she couldn't exactly get it out. And I knew she was in bad shape, so I also called for an ambulance.
Do you think you could describe Miss Villanueva's words, maybe, or are you not sure?
Yes. So what she was trying to say is that kid, and then she would pause, came out of nowhere, and then she would pause, driving so fast, she tried to stop, tell my family, and then she couldn't say anything else.
Okay. So, whenever you went to go talk to the three witnesses,
Mhm.
how did they sound after the accident happened?
Peyton Piper had hit her head, and I just told her to kind of just sit down because she was not, she really couldn't remember anything. She would just sit there and she was kind of out of it. She's kind of dazed. And then there was a younger man and then another girl beside them.
So you could say that they were all decently banged up from the accident. Okay. It says here in the statements that you went to inspect the defendant's car, Mr. Nathan Goodman's, after the accident. Is that correct?
I did, but I went and talked to them first before to kind of ask what happened. And then later on, whenever he told me I could go get his phone, I did go get it.
So
But I didn't examine inside of the car until he told me I could go get his phone, and I located it.
So Mr. Nathan Goodman did give you permission to search the car in order to obtain his phone?
Yes.
And whenever you did go in order to search for that, where exactly did you find the defendant's phone?
And the driver's floorboard.
The driver's side?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. After all that, did they describe text roulette to you, Larry?
They did. It was they kind of described it to each other and not directly me. It was kind of their interactions because they were yelling at each other about it. But basically, I kind of perceived it as texting each other in random contacts on each other's phones, and it was kind of like a game, I guess.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
She just.
Thank you. So, as far as all the evidence that you've seen as far as text roulette goes, you'd say that it's a decently dangerous game to be playing while you're driving, correct?
While you're driving, yes.
Okay. Aside from those interactions, do you think you could give any more details about the witnesses, like maybe what they said to each other or something like that?
Yes. So, Mr. Goodman he looked at me and he was obviously upset, and you could tell he was kind of overwhelmed by what had happened. And he was just yelling, and I don't know if it was directly towards me or who it was. He was just kind of yelling it out in general. I can't believe this is happening, and I'm never playing text roulette again.
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay. She's testifying about what another witness is saying.
It's stated
It's
clearly in the
in my-
statements that they were, as you said.
It's sworn in the affidavit.
Still testifying.
Overruled.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Miss Cole, how long have you been on the job?
2 years now, and then when I responded to this wreck, it was a few months. It was my first big situation as a cop.
Okay, so it says in your statement that you had only been with the CCSD for a couple of months, as you just stated.
Mhm.
And with this being your first situation, would you say you were nervous at all?
I wasn't quite nervous just because I've responded to other wrecks with other officers, but never alone, actually responded. But I was overwhelmed just by how bad the wreck looked.
Okay. So, what did you see when you first encountered the crash?
When I first pulled up, there was a Volkswagen and a Volvo, and they were both really smashed up, and you could tell that it was a bad wreck.
So, you would agree that her vehicle, Miss V's, it didn't have any airbags and it was very old and not fit for driving.
I wouldn't say it was not fit for driving, but maybe not for this exact year, and it probably needed more safety features. Yes.
Okay, so along with that, so you would agree that Mr. Goodman in vehicle 1 had been jerked to the right prior to the crash.
I'm really not sure which way they jerked. I can tell you which way the vehicles are facing, but I'm not sure which way they were jerking.
Okay, in your statement it says that you said, I knew this to be consistent with being thrown to the left as the car suddenly swerves to the right.
Yeah.
Okay,
She's
so you just said, you're saying that's what you did say now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Okay. So where was Mr. Goodman's phone?
I found it in the driver's floorboard.
In front of the driver's seat, which could have occurred doing it to being on the right side, and when the car swerved, it was jerked the other way.
Possibly.
Objection, leading the witness.
simple
Leading where?
Leading the witness to make a statement based on her statement.
Well, what they're saying don't really make that much sense anyway, so.
Car
Not really, but
car
it's okay.
swerves right. Simple physics tells you
Everything in
Into-
the car goes
it's gonna
left.
get thrown left.
She said in her statement too. So that would, the phone could have been on the right side and thrown to the left, as she said in her statement.
You can say, just ask a question, yes or no. You can instruct Krista to say, just ask a question that's going to give a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
What'd she say?
Ask that question. You can't tell her what to say and then ask a question. So you say, did the car, in your statement, did the car swerve left? If the car swerved left, how would the materials in the car react?
Yeah, this question.
Okay.
Okay. She said yes.
You can't tell them what to say and then ask the question.
Thank you, Your Honorable Mama Rock.
Okay. So, in your statement, you said that Jordan told you she saw Miss V veering into their lane,
Yes.
where she testified earlier that she didn't see that. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Your Honor, I would like to re-examine my witness. Squeeze in there. Okay, Miss Maggie Cole, I'd like to ask you some more final questions if I could, please. You said that you were on the force for how long?
A few months
A few months now?
during this wreck, but I've been on the force for a little under 2 years now.
Why exactly, if you don't mind me asking, why did you join the force, if you don't mind me asking?
My parents were both cops, and I just kind of looked up to them because they were always serving the community. So it was kind of just something I had always wanted to do.
Is there a certain reason why you decided that, yeah, this is what I want to do aside from like anything else, like a simple patrolman or like a simple like just appearing anywhere else? Is some specifically your job right now?
Really, because I just like helping people, and in situations like this, I kind of did want to help both sides. I saw that the defendant, he was pretty, banged up, and he was overwhelmed about it. And then I also wanted to help Miss Vivian, because she was she was in bad shape, and I knew she probably would not make it, and I think she knew that too. But I just kind of wanted to help both people because I knew they were needing help, and that's just kind of what I wanted to do, is help people.
Because I saw in my statements that in the past your father was a policeman, correct?
He was.
And what exactly did he do on the job? The same similar things you're doing?
Yeah.
And you'd say that he'd done his job pretty much more or less all right?
Yeah.
At least to a certain degree?
Mhm.
No further questions?
I have a question now.
Not allowed.
Okay, after this, and not just at all, after this, I'm letting them go back, but after this, no more, because in a real trial,
You only get the
you
re-exam.
only get to re-exam. Okay, so in a real trial, Krista would not be able to question the witness again, if this were like not a mock trial situation. They would have to address whatever you're gonna address right now, say in a closing argument or something. But for the purpose of this trial and the fact that we have a week to plan, you can't iron out every crease. I mean, people go to law school for, a long time. So I'm letting that happen, okay? But after you say this, then we have to call the next witness, okay?
Okay. So I just have a question about your dad, as he brought up. So why was your dad fired?
He had
Objection,
early.
relevance.
Your Honor. She's trying to
Relevant
use
to
her
this
bias.
case.
She's trying to establish a bias that she has for the actual crime itself.
Establish a bias for the crime itself.
Overruled.
Continue, sorry.
He took early retirement. They let him from the police department.
But why did he have to take early retirement?
He had planted evidence on someone. I don't know the full case as it was. I was in high school when this happened, so I didn't really know exactly what was happening. I just heard what was happening with him. But he put someone who was like really evil, and it was just, he was a creep, and he put him in jail.
Okay, so in your statement, it said that back then, if you were in your dad's shoes, you can't say that you wouldn't have done the same thing. But then you later changed that, said that you wouldn't do it. What made you change that?
Being in this position of the job, I kind of wanted to be better than my dad. I knew he was only trying to do better for the community and put this guy up. But at the same time, what he did was not right. And being on the job now, I take it a lot more seriously than he ever did, and I would not do that at all. But I changed that because I feel like if you have people who know the law and don't do that, like my dad did, and I kind of took his mistake and I kind of learned from it, and I wanted to do better than that.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution calls their third witness.
The prosecution would like to call Gail Robbins to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Please, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Can you please state your name and age for the court?
My name's Gail Robbins and I'm 40 years old.
Okay, and where did you go to school?
I went to Jackson University.
And what did you get your degree in?
I got an undergraduate in physics and a master's in criminal justice.
Okay, and can you tell the court where you work?
I work at the Union County Sheriff's Office and I'm in the art department.
Okay, and can you state what the art department stands for?
We are the accident reconstruction team.
And what do they do in the force?
We show up to the accidents, and after everybody's gone, we kind of figure out what happened and how it happened.
Okay. How long have you been in the art department?
I've been the head of the art department for 5 years.
Let it be known to the jury that witness Gail Robbins is an expert opinion witness.
Okay. Now, from the evidence that you have seen, can you determine if there is a difference in speed between the defendant and victim?
There was.
Who was going faster, and what can you tell the speed?
From the evidence that my team gathered, Nathan Goodman's car was going faster.
Okay. And can you describe the road that the crash took place on?
River Road is a very curvy road and it has no shoulder, and it's a very dangerous road at night to be driving on.
Let the jury know that my witness has stated how dangerous the road was at the time of the accident. In your sketch, you have put skid marks. Can you tell the jury whose vehicle they belong to?
Vehicle 2, Miss Villanueva.
For the victim's skid marks, you have stated that they were caused by locked wheel skid. Can you
Yes.
describe what that is?
Locked wheel skid is when a car, they're common in older cars, it is when they have no anti-lock brakes. And when you slam really hard on your brakes, it locks your wheels up and the car continues to move forward.
And do you know the year of the defendant's car?
It was an 82.
The defendant's car was an 82?
The defendant's is an 08. The victim's was an 82.
And does it have the anti-lock brakes?
It does.
So it's a newer model. That means that, but in your knowledge, will there be any kind of marks on the road?
There should still be at least scuff marks on the road left by the car if he had tried to brake or slow down at any speed.
In your sketch, there's only one set of skid marks. Can you
Yes.
explain why?
Because the evidence that we found in the westbound lane, there was none. The evidence showed that he didn't try to slow down.
And was it your team or you that drew the sketch?
I did.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
Alright.
the prosecution rests.
Alright. Alright, so court is adjourned till 10 what?
10 a.m. Wednesday morning.
10 a.m. Wednesday.
Hey, great job.
Yeah.
First day in court, how do you think it went?
First day in court, we feel it was a little harder than I expected, but we still feel confident.
Confident.
Anything out there that you weren't expecting to see?
Not particularly. I feel like the defense planned really well for all the questions asked, and I feel like the week leading up to this, we did our job pretty good. And if any of you two want to add anything, you can go ahead.
Maybe the judges' rulings on some of the objections.
I wasn't prepared for as many objections as the prosecution was willing to use. It seems like they were just throwing them out there whenever they couldn't prove anything, but I don't know. It was pretty liberal use, I would say. I feel
100%.
I feel more confident than when I walked in. I believe that Mr. Goodman he's innocent. He's innocent.
All right, first day in court, prosecution, how do we think it went? How are we feeling?
I feel like the courtroom was pretty heated this morning. The discussions were kind of out of our proceedings, so handling it was at the mercy of the judge and at the mercy of the attorneys, but quick wits. So throughout the entire examination, we were doing our best to handle the courtroom, but in one word, I would have to describe it as heated.
Very much so.
Anything that y'all weren't expecting to see out of the witnesses' testimonies?
Out of the witnesses' testimonies, we feel like we were very prepared with our questioning. We prepared our witnesses beforehand in all the ways we knew how, and I feel like all of our witnesses, to the best of their ability, they handled their questioning from both us and from the defense quite well, to the best of their ability, I would say.
But then again, we only have our witnesses right now. The next day we're going to be dealing with the defenses, so that might be something different.
Wednesday, we'll just have to see.
What about the defense? Did you get anything from them today that you didn't expect out there?
I was not expecting a lot from the defense. I was not expecting. I really was not expecting the level of vigor from the defense. But I feel like we countered it to the best of our ability, I would say. I'm excited to see how court goes
We
Wednesday.
only had a week to prepare, so we couldn't find everything that we knew that the defense was gonna say.
Right.
Last question. Do y'all still 100% maintain that Mr. Goodman is guilty?
Yes.
Y'all will sit down now. Alright. So y'all got everything ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Alright. Defense, you may call your first witness to the stand.
The defense would like to call Casey Galloway to the stand.
Alright, bring him up here.
We're working on it.
You swear to tell the truth, all the truth. Nothing but the truth. Nothing but the truth. Yes.
Mr. Galloway, what do you do for a living?
I run my own private investigation service called Galloway Consulting.
How long have you been in this line of work?
25 years, 17 in the force, 8 as a private consultant.
Where did you go to college?
Ole Miss. I graduated with honors from Ole Miss University.
What are some things you've done since you've started working?
I've spoken at trade conferences and I've published numerous articles.
So, when we brought you onto this case, rewind. What was your first thought when you saw the news story about the accident revolving?
The first thing I thought was, isn't Miss Vivian too old to be driving?
So, what was the first thing you started investigating?
First thing I started investigating was the sheriff's department's reports and diagrams and Garcia's crash diagram.
Your Honor, I would like to present Exhibit 1 to the court, detailing Miss Garcia's crash diagram. Fortunately, I do not have another one. Oh, there's one right there. Okay, well, I guess that's mine. So, Mr. Galloway, did anything stand out about this crash?
Yes, vehicle 2's tire marks,
Why did the tire marks of vehicle 2 in particular stand out?
because they went into the other lane.
So, do you think there's a chance that Mr. Goodman could have caused this accident?
No,
Why not?
because first of all, Miss Vivian was too old to be driving, and her vehicle was old too, so there could have been a malfunction. Something could have went in front of her car, an animal or something like that, and
So, Mr. Galloway, would you say that there's no lack of other reasonable, plausible explanations for the scene of this crash?
yes.
That'd be all.
Prosecution and cross-examination.
Mr. Galloway, when you were on the force, how long were you working before you started your private investigation?
25 years.
And why did you start your private investigation office?
Because I quit my old job.
And why did you quit in the first place?
I was wrongly accused of falsifying evidence.
In your statement, you had said why you were accused of falsifying evidence. Can you tell the court what that reason was?
Can you repeat the question?
When you're accused, the allegation of you falsifying evidence, can you tell the court what the reason was?
The reason
The reason why you quit? You were accused of falsifying evidence.
I was accused of falsifying a crash diagram.
Your Honor, permission to clarify for the witness.
Go ahead.
In your statement, you said that, so it's correct that you were accused of falsifying evidence, correct? That is what you said?
Yes.
Can you tell us why that is? Can you tell us the details of that?
Well, I drew up a crash diagram for a case, and the prosecution came up with bogus photos that said my diagram was impossible.
Thank you, Your Honor. Seth, you may resume.
Earlier, you mentioned that it's possible that Miss Vivian had seen an animal crossing the road and she had swerved to avoid it. Is it also but I'm curious why, if Mr. Goodman was paying attention, why didn't he swerve to avoid Miss Vivian?
Because he either would have went into off the road or into her car.
You've also accessed the victim's DMV records. Your permission to let the jury see the victim's DMV records?
Would that something we called as not relevant to the case, or what was the deal behind that?
What was the question?
It's evidence.
Yeah, if it was part of the package.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's exhibit.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's exhibit 4.
I just couldn't remember, there was some controversy on that or something.
It's on my side. We'll
DMV
get that
record
later.
accessed by Mr. Galloway during his investigation. Now, you had stated that she was too old to be driving. What was her age?
88.
And at what age do you think too old to drive is?
Probably low 70s, mid 70s.
Now you also access the defendant, Mr. Goodman's DMV records. What were they like? Because we don't have them.
They were spotless.
Now, the defendant is a minor, correct?
No,
So he would be 18 then?
The defendant is 18.
Alright. So, with him being 18, he would have had his license for 2, maybe 3 years. Most people, when they are new to something, they tend to follow it to the letter, and so that way they don't get in trouble. That could be why Mr. Goodman doesn't have any records on his DMV, correct?
what was the question?
Would Mr. Goodman have any records because he barely had his license for 2 years?
Yes,
Okay. That's the road that the crash happened on. Would you classify it as a dangerous road at the time?
yes,
Alright. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right,
At the request of the defense, do I have permission to clarify?
go ahead.
So, according to his testimony, the questions he was trying to allude are, so how old would you say is too old to drive in your words?
mid 70s.
Okay, so according to that, then why was she still allowed to renew her license?
Because she didn't have any citation or anything until she reached that old age that she is now.
So constitutionally, Miss Vivian is allowed to drive.
Yes,
There's nothing that states concretely that she's not old enough to. So, Mr. Goodman is 18, correct?
correct.
So at this time, according to the law, he would have only possessed his license for 2 years, correct?
Yes,
So would you say that because of that 2 years, that has anything to do with his spotless record? Only possessing his license for 2 years, would you say that that has anything to do with the reason that his record made it clean?
yes.
Thank you, no further questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. That's your cross-examination.
So I would like to bring up Mrs. Alexandria's point about the record of Mr. Goodman only being 2 years of driving. I'd also like to clarify that Mrs. Villanueva's record was all done within a year. That was 3 traffic violations within a year. So just wanted to go ahead and clarify that before we start. So, year and a half. I would also like to apologize. It was a year and a half. I'm sorry.
Proceed.
Okay. So, when you were going over Miss Villanueva's driving record, what did you see in the year and a half stretch?
I saw that before 2015, she had only 1 citation, traffic citation, and then after 2015, she had 3.
Alright. So, would you say, according to Miss Jordan's testimony of her not being in the best health whenever she saw her, that this could contribute to her traffic violations?
Yes,
So, would you say that this elderly woman who appeared to be not in good health should have even been on a road, especially that late in such a dangerous road that River Road is?
yes,
Would you say she belongs out there?
no.
No further questions.
Prosecution also next witness. Defense. Okay. Defense, your next witness.
I would like to call Peyton Piper to the stand.
You swear to tell the truth, all the truth, and nothing but the truth.
Could you please state your name and age?
I'm Peyton Piper and I'm 18 years old.
Where did you go to school?
Washington Tennis Center.
What Would you say that you're a responsible and successful student?
I would. I've taken plenty of classes in the medical field because I plan to be a brain surgeon when I get older.
Okay. So your plans after graduation are to become a brain surgeon? Okay. So what were you doing on the night of May 12th?
I was going to a party with Nathan and Jordan.
What was the last thing you remember before the wreck?
I remember Miss Vivian's car swerving into our lane.
And what was the first thing you remember doing after the wreck?
Immediately calling 911.
So you would say that you immediately called after the wreck?
I did.
Okay. Would you say that Nathan was texting and driving and you were texting and driving? Or texting and writing?
I was, yes.
Okay, so you said in your statement that text roulette was winding down closer to River Road. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So you clearly remember seeing Nathan swerve due to Miss V being in your lane?
I do.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Prosecution, your cross-examination.
Thank you, Ms. Piper. If you don't mind me asking, ready to Ms. Chris's questions, you did say that you plan to become a neurobiologist whenever you became older? Okay. And you have, here in your statements, it says that you suffered a concussion after the accident, or whenever the accident occurred. Okay. It seems kind of weird how those two things play together, but that's more than acceptable.
What, me getting a concussion?
Yeah. Neurobiology, concussion, anything. I'm just trying to make light of the situation. Okay, so on to the regular questions. Just saying, it seems kind of something. Okay. You said you go to West Union, correct? Okay. When would you say you met the defendant? And, well, the defendant and Miss Jordan Atwood?
2 years ago.
2 years ago at West Union Attendance Center? Okay. During your statements, you described that your concussion led you to not be able to remember most of the events of the prior night, correct?
I wasn't able to remember some things, yes.
But you are able to recall some of them. Okay. If you don't mind, I'd like to hear it directly from your perspective. Could you say more or less what you remember from the accident? Some statements that you can remember?
I just remember us driving down the road and Miss Vivian swerving into our lane and us having to swerve right, and then it kind of went black for a minute, and then I immediately called 911.
Okay. Can you remember the exact time at which you called 911?
8:53.
8:53 p.m.? Okay. I have a certain piece of evidence here that does show that she was able to do that, but also to Mr. Goodman's mother, it says that there was a text sent at 8:48 p.m. and those are 5 minutes apart, correct? 8:48, 8:53. So you want to do all that? Does the jury have the evidence of the text messages?
Exhibit 2, I believe.
Exhibit 2? No. I'd like to distribute that at this time. Okay. That is the text message that was sent to Mr. Goodman's mother at that precise time. And the crash happened 5 minutes in between there. Okay. So I can give that to you now. Okay. Is there anything else that you were able to recall aside from that, what you stated? Not much? Okay. It also says that in your statements that you have a journal and that you were able to precisely remember the time at which the accident occurred, correct? Okay. Now, also according to your statements here, who exactly had Mr. Goodman's phone the last person to have his phone by the accident?
My memory is foggy, so I cannot confirm or deny who had the phone.
It says here in your statements that you had the phone last, and that you stated that you had the phone last.
I said Nathan told me that I had the phone last, but I cannot myself confirm or deny.
I'd like to go ahead and show the witness. Because it says here in your statements, and I even have it highlighted in orange if you would like to believe me. Right there. Danny told me I was the last person with the phone before the crash and that he was pretty adamant that I was the person with the phone.
Yeah, Danny told me, but I don't know for sure if I was the one. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, he said that you were the person that did have the phone last, and that and that whenever we interrogated Miss Maggie Cole, that she found the phone in the driver's side. So in his words, you had the phone last, and whenever she went to go inspect the car, that she found Mr. Goodman's phone in the driver's side.
Well, most of the time, if anything on the right, whenever you swerve to the right, it'll fall to the left.
And you are pretty confident with that?
Mhm.
Would you say you were in the right state of mind whenever this accident occurred?
I
And
was.
even afterwards?
Mhm.
Again, does say in your statements here that you weren't in the best frame of mind and that you cannot remember most of the
Well, I can't
events.
remember everything, but.
But you can remember some of it.
Mhm.
And you're not able to determine whether or not you were in the right state of mind whenever the accident occurred?
Objection badgering. The witness already answered the question.
I'm simply just. My apologies. Okay. My apologies. Whenever you were playing text roulette, it says here in your statements that I'll admit that sometimes I might say some untrue and even crazy stuff during text roulette, but you said it was all in good fun, according to your statements here.
I did.
But you would say that compared to everybody else's statements describing text roulette, that it's a fairly unsafe game to play, especially while driving.
Yeah, it is.
So why were you doing it?
I wasn't doing it. I wasn't driving.
You weren't partaking in the text roulette,
I was, but I wasn't driving.
but you would still say that if you weren't doing it, that the crash probably would not have happened.
No, because the last message was sent 5 minutes before the crash ever happened.
Even whenever the crash happened, would you say that if you were not playing text roulette at all, that it'd be fairly easy to identify Miss Villanueva swerving into the lane, depending on your statements that she swerved into the lane?
Objection leading.
I'm simply trying to ask the witness about this.
She already answered the questions, saying.
What were you doing just before the accident?
I don't remember, but I know I was either on Danny's phone or I was messing with the radio.
It does say here that you were DJing before the accident.
What you just
Messing with
said.
the radio.
I'm just trying to clarify because you said you were doing either one.
Mhm.
Good, just making sure. Okay. Doctors said that your memories would come back to you. Did he say that your memories would come back to you or that you would recover some over time?
He said that some might, yes, but possibly not all.
So you'd say that you haven't regained a lot of the memories that you had,
Not all of them, no.
but would you say you've gained some crucial ones or no? Not crucial ones pertaining
I know
to
for
the
a fact that
situation.
I called immediately after the wreck and I remember Miss Vivian swerving into our lane.
And not anybody else swerving? It does say in your
Objection. The
statement.
witness has already
I
testified
already answered
all of her
that.
memories.
I'm just trying to,
I mean, he's asking the
She
same
already
question
answered all
over
the
and over.
questions.
I'm simply trying to clarify the evidence. I'm simply trying to
Further
confirm.
questions?
Ask her a fresh question.
Fresh questions? Anyone else?
Any more that she's already answered, you're gonna get hit with an objection.
You already have that piece of evidence in front of you, but I've simply marked it up. You can confirm that this isn't Villanueva's car, correct?
It is.
And that this was the defendant's car, the car that you were, everybody else was in, correct? And you remember that this car swerved into your lane, correct?
It did.
And it obviously said in your statements that you don't remember the car swerving at all. At least your car.
Where does it say that?
It says in your statements that even if Danny was texting, that you don't think that he would swerve into the other lane at all.
What's the question?
I'm simply stating whether or not the car that you were in was able to swerve at all. You said in your statements that you do not think that Mr. Goodman's car could have swerved, despite the fact that everybody was texting.
Objection argumentative.
Please make your question more clear to the witness.
And could you show her where in her statement it says that?
Sure. Somebody? Right here in your statements, I don't think Danny crossed the yellow lines, even if Danny did text a little.
Clarity for the jury, Danny, we've identified as Nathan. Materials for the mock trial come with, alias names, and Danny is Nathan.
Could you clarify your question?
I did clarify my question.
Okay, but the
Yellow
yellow
line's in the
line is
middle.
the middle of the road, not, if she swerved to the right, she swerved off the road, not into the middle.
I was simply asking if the defendant's car was able to swerve at all, because in her statement, she did say that despite everybody else texting, she did not think that the car was able to swerve.
Into the middle.
Into the middle lane.
Because yellow
I said
line
he
was the
swerved to
middle
the
lane.
right.
Your
She
Honor,
said
no further questions from the prosecution.
swerved
Judge
off the
Montague.
right.
Okay, Mother.
Defense, would you like to re-examine your witness?
So you would say that the car did not swerve over the yellow lanes until the middle of the road, but you had said swerved right,
Yes.
okay? And you would also clarify to me that text roulette had stopped 5 minutes before the wreck occurred.
Yes. Because
thank
Danny
you.
took his phone to answer his mom.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, next witness.
Your Honor, the defense will like to call that a good citizen. All right. Mr. Goodman, where do you currently reside?
1030 County Road 7.
Where do you go to school?
Question in attendance.
What grade are you in?
12.
Okay. Can you please tell the court what events took place on May 12th?
We had left from school and I had texted my buddy Landry and found out that they were hanging out at the lake later that night. I asked Jordan and I asked Peyton and they both seemed like they'd be into it. So later that night, I began driving us down River Road toward the lake.
Okay. Did you have your phone on hand when the accident happened?
No, I had handed it to Peyton.
Okay. Would you say that it's possible that the phone could have ended up on your side after the crash?
Yes, because we swerved right.
Okay. How would you describe your relationship with Jordan Atwood leading up to the night of the crash?
It was in turmoil. We argued a lot and didn't really get along.
Okay. Do you think she had a resentment or a grudge towards you?
Yes.
Why do you think that?
Because I got her in trouble at school and in trouble with her mom.
Okay. Could you please elaborate, like go into the details, like what you texted her mom?
While we were playing text roulette, I had her phone and I ended up texting some swear words to her mom, all in good fun.
Okay. Mr. Goodman, what was the last thing you remember right before the crash?
I remember handing Peyton my phone.
And then?
And then I swear.
Not right before. I'm saying right before the crash, like as the crash happened.
Miss Vivian was in my lane and I swerved right to avoid her.
Okay. Since you've been driving, have you had any violations or road incidents before the crash?
No, I have not. I have a clean record.
Okay. Would you say you're a careful driver?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to present Exhibit 2. You already have it. You can look at it. Could you read that text for me? That's the last text. To clarify to the jury, that's the last text that Mr. Goodman sent to his mom.
I said, "Hi, Mom. I promise I won't be out too late. We're only going to Buddy's for some burgers. Love you."
Okay. How long after you sent this did the accident happen?
It took about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. So you sent the text at 8:48, correct?
Yes.
And then you tossed the phone back to Peyton, correct?
Yes.
And then a couple minutes later, boom, crash happened, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is it true that Miss Atwood said something about how you didn't swerve hard enough to get out of the way at the scene?
Yes.
And is it true that she said nothing about you texting and driving at the scene?
Yes.
No further questions.
Prosecution, your cross-examination.
Mr. Mr. Goodman, how would you describe yourself in a few words?
I tend to be a strict rule follower. I don't really like to do things that can be dangerous. I don't like to do things that can get people hurt.
And how well would you say that you recall the night of the incident?
I remember it pretty well. It still haunts me, and I still have nightmares of the accident.
And could you tell me what the plan was when you gathered up your friends? What was your plan for the night?
We were going to go to the lake and hang out with Landry and some other people at a party.
And would you tell me again how would you describe your relationship with my witness, Ms. Jordan Atwood?
It was in turmoil because we had argued a lot, and there was a lot of things that I felt she still was holding against me.
Because of the incident with her mother over text roulette?
Yes.
Is that the first time you've gotten her in trouble?
No, I've also gotten her in trouble at school because I like to follow the rules, and I figured she should also.
Whose car did the group take to the lake?
We took my car.
And were you the driver on the night of the incident?
Yes.
So what can you tell me about your experience with text roulette? How do you feel about it?
Whenever we were playing it at school and at her mom's, it was all just in good fun, playing a game, and it's something that was just all trying to have fun with each other.
So on the night of the incident, was it your idea to play text roulette?
Yes, before we started heading there.
And do you remember much of the conversation when you brought up the idea of playing text roulette? Within her affidavit, my witness says that you two had a conversation. Do you recall that conversation at all?
No, I do not.
So according to Miss Atwood's affidavit, she quotes you saying, "You're such a goof, Jordan. It'll be fine. Let's just have fun tonight. School's almost over." And it states at this time, as you said, you had left town and were heading for River Road.
Nowhere in my affidavit does it say that.
But in her affidavit it does. That you brought up, within your affidavit, it says that you brought up the idea of playing text roulette before leaving town, but in hers it's contradictory, saying that you were heading for River Road. So would you consider River Road a dangerous road?
Yes.
Did you know any alternate routes to get to the lake?
No, I did not.
So if that's the case, did your driving become more careful when you approached it?
Yes, because I know it's a dangerous road and I've driven it many times to go see Landry.
So do you remember any of the conversations that you had with anyone in the vehicle that night?
I do not.
So would you say that your memory was fuzzy? Because in several statements, we have you having conversations with several different witnesses, but in your statement, it says that you can't remember any of them, which is not related to an injury, correct?
Correct. It is not due to an injury. It is.
Objection, compound question. She asked a question, then she asked another question. There's two questions.
I don't know if there's like really anything wrong with that, is there?
Be easier for the witness to be like,
Yeah, that's like-
at a time.
Okay, please make your questions easier on the witness.
Yes, Your Honor. So, did you sustain an injury on the night of the accident?
No.
And you say that you can't recall any conversations with anyone.
I cannot recall conversations, but I can remember events from that night.
Mr. Goodman, at any point in the night were you texting behind the wheel?
Yes, but we were going less than 25 miles per hour, and I would only text while we were stopped at stop signs.
Were you in town when you were?
We were in downtown whenever I was driving 25 miles per hour, and we quit texting as we got closer toward River Road.
So in your affidavit, it states that you brought up the idea of playing text roulette while in town. But in my witness, it says that she testifies that you brought up the idea when you're outside of town, heading towards River Road. So how could you have been texting and driving while in town if text roulette wasn't brought up until you had left the city limits?
Because we've already been playing it in town, and that's why we've been texting in town.
So, just to clarify, you state that you had been texting and driving during the night of the accident.
While in town, only at stop signs, not while driving.
So if that's the case, then why should I or the jury believe that you could not be a repeat offender? That while you approached River Road, that you couldn't have been texting and driving then too?
You'll just have to take my word at it, and from my fellow witness that he had the phone. She.
Mr. Goodman, the text thread between you and your mother shown in Exhibit 2, was that you sending the message? Did you have the phone in your hand when that message was sent?
Yes.
So you grabbed the phone from Peyton
Yes.
to send that message?
Yes. And then I handed it right back to her.
Do you mind reading the statement that you sent to your mother?
Hi, Mom. I promise I won't be out too late. We are only going to Buddy's for some burgers. Love you.
So according to your statement, that wasn't the plan for the night, correct?
Correct.
Why'd you lie?
Because my mom did not like Landry, and my mom had already had stuff against him and didn't think he was the best person for me to hang out with. So I texted a lie so I could go and hang out with him.
So while you had the phone in your hand while sending that text, do you remember having a conversation again?
I do not.
So my client states in her affidavit, Ms. Jordan, you said to her, "Just chill out, Jordan. My mom and Landry are bugging me." There are 5 minutes between the text sent from your mother, not you, back to your mother, the text sent from her to you. There are 5 minutes between that and the call being sent from Ms. Piper's phone, correct?
Yes.
So would you say that it's possible for a text message to be sent from your mother's phone, received by your phone, you to hear the notification, grab the phone from Peyton's hand, have a conversation with Ms. Atwood, send a reply text, and still compensate for time for the crash to occur and the debris to settle, not to mention the time that it takes for Ms. Piper to locate her phone and place a call?
Objection, Your Honor. How was he supposed to answer this question?
Is that possible in 5 minutes?
I texted back a quick reply, and then I handed the phone right back to Peyton. I did not sit there and have a conversation while doing the text. I had only grabbed it as soon as I heard the notification. Then as soon as I hit send, the phone went back to Peyton.
Within the 5 minutes for
Easily
the crash to
within
occur?
5 minutes.
So Mr. Goodman, do you have a personal relationship with the victim, Ms. Vivian Villanueva?
I had seen her around at school bait sales, and I had seen her before, and I saw that she was moving really slowly at the time.
Was it upsetting to you to find out that she's now deceased?
Yes, I still have nightmares to this day.
And how does that make you feel that you were behind the wheel in the crash that resulted in her death?
I feel horrible, but the crash was not my fault. I tried to avoid it, and she swerved further into my lane, causing the accident.
A lot of events happened that night, did they not?
Yes.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Or M. It's questions we want answered by both the prosecution and/or defense.
Okay.
All right. On y'all's document of the text message that from Mom, if you look at the top up there, it says 8:48. We would like to clarify which time his response was given to the to it. You know.
We don't
No.
have a timestamp for the response to Mom. That's when the text thread was began by her text message. That's when her text message was.
No.
She texted him at 8:48, he responded at 8:48.
How do we know that?
We don't. We don't have a timestamp for it.
You don't have a timestamp on the side.
You don't.
In my testimony, it says I grabbed the phone as soon as I heard it, and then I text back.
So it's just, it's
Which-
just.
All right, okay.
Notification came straight through if you're on
We
a
don't.
road in the middle of
So
the
then
road.
how do you know that it's sent straight back to the one?
Y'all can't question back and forth.
We're asking you the question.
We can't ask him questions.
We don't. We have no clarity.
All right, next question. Y'all stated that it was exactly 5 minutes after the text message to when Drew called 911. Do y'all have proof of that call? Do we have the phone
We
records?
do. I have a comprehensive list of events that happened based on all 6 statements, if you'd like to view it.
Do y'all have the y'all?
Yes, y'all have it too. She just put it in.
Based on all 6 statements, this is the comprehensive list of events.
But do we have the record of it?
Do we have the, did y'all?
In
Within the
Drew's
affidavit,
statement,
we
she,
don't have-
in
this is
Drew's
all based
statement,
on-
she
So
does
it's
that.
just based on the statement?
Just based
Yes,
on
it's based on the
That's
statement.
all we need to know. Okay, this one is to, this one's to the defendant. You describe yourself as a rule follower, but you still lied to your mother. Can you elaborate on that?
Defendant, please stand.
I lied to her because Landry and me had been close friends, and he used to be my neighbor, so we had grown up together. And I do follow rules whenever it comes to at school and for the law, but I lied to her because I thought she wouldn't let us go and hang out with him.
So you're saying you just lie when it benefits you? Huh? Is that true?
No.
No.
You can't say it.
Brother, I'm not asking you, I'm asking you. So you only lie when it benefits and it's in your benefit, correct? Your head shook yes. Your body said no. All right, next question.
You're talking kind of biased right now.
Next question. Why were you laying down in the back seat? Were you drunk? How did you see him swerve or not swerve? Well, that don't stop half the people in this room underage from drinking. So you were just laying down tired? Okay, thank you. All right, next question is for Adam. Adam, are you Maggie's untruthful dad? Huh? Well, it stated.
Clevon and Maggie Cole.
All right.
Your Honor, permission to make Brian the new prosecution.
Jordan, next question to you. If you were laying down, your testimony was that you saw him texting and swerve. If you were laying down, how did you observe this?
I was up at that time.
You were up at that time? Okay.
So you laid down in the middle of the wreck?
And I was up.
All right, last question. Did the prosecution, did y'all do did they pull a blood alcohol test or a urine test on him? Okay.
We have no tests. All we have are the text messages, the DMV records, and the
sketch made by Miss Robbins.
Future students, I will be giving lessons in prosecution later on. That's
Closing statement. Prosecution, always.
Prosecution and closing statements.
Thank you.
Hold up. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Alexandria Robertson, representing the state of Mississippi as a prosecutor in this case. In my opening statement, I mentioned that my team would call 3 witnesses to testify as to the defendant's guilt. Each witness has testified, as I explained, and we have established the following facts beyond a reasonable doubt. That on the night of May 12, 2017, the defendant was texting and driving leading up to the crash on River Road. That our defendant, as well as another defense witness, has an unreliable memory, and that the timeline of events on the night of the incident is askew. Our witnesses have testified that the phone was found in the floorboard of the driver's seat, that the defendant was in possession of the phone to text his mother, and that all of the crucial events of the crash itself could not have possibly taken place in the time frame of 5 measly minutes. We would ask that you reject the defense theories of this case, that Ms. Villanueva is unfit to drive because it is a constitutional right that citizens of the U.S. not be discriminated against based on their race, their gender, nor their age. Provide closure for the victim's family and put this case to rest. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Nathan Goodman is guilty of reckless behavior, and we ask that you would provide us with a verdict of guilty as charged. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so you ready for your closing statement?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this morning, a teenager's life is in your hands. The prosecution has failed to prove that my client, Mr. Goodman, was texting on his phone when the crash happened. A wonderful person lost her life. It's an awful tragedy. But Nathan Goodman is not at fault. Let's connect the dots. Ms. Jordan said herself that the words right before or right after could be 30 seconds apart. Ms. Payton testified, and it is proven that the 911 call, well, not necessarily proven, but she testified that the 911 call was made at 8:53 immediately after the accident, when the last text was sent at 8:48. And also, he did not receive any text in between that time. So it makes perfect sense that Mr. Goodman texted his mom at 8:48, gave his phone back to Payton, then a couple of minutes later, boom, tries to swerve right to miss a vehicle coming into his lane but fails. Mrs. Atwood has resentment towards my client due to the inappropriate text that was sent to her mom. And out of anger and grievance for her old neighbor, wants to believe that it's her friend's fault that she is gone. Not to mention the very lengthy driving record that Miss Vivian had acquired in a very short time. Members of the jury, the only witness who testifies that the defendant was texting just prior to the accident admitted to law enforcement that her memory was foggy, and also admitted that she couldn't see everything that was happening in the front seat. I'm beside myself that the prosecution attacked my client for being a kid and having fun. Ms. Robertson thinks that if he texted earlier in the job, then he's guilty. The witness's testimony and evidence does not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Goodman was texting during the accident. There's no evidence that suggests his attention was not focused on his driving at the time of the accident. If you really believe that the prosecution has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the crime has occurred, then you are going to send this man to prison for the rest of his life. I implore you to carefully weigh the evidence and testimony and cast your vote not guilty.
Yes. All right, this last part is for the jury. The defense is innocent unless or until proven that the defendant is guilty. Beyond a reasonable doubt, the burden is on the prosecution to prove the guilt of the defendant beyond reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is doubt based on common sense and reason. Reasonable doubt means an honest uncertainty as to the guilt of the defendant. Reasonable doubt exists when, after careful and partial consideration of all the evidence in the case, you are not convicted to a moral certainty that the defendant is guilty. It said like reasonable doubt like 20 times. All right.
Nancy, right now, you think guilty or not guilty?
He is not guilty. Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Yeah.
Madison, crowd reactions, guilty or not guilty before the verdict?
Guilty.
Harley?
Guilty.
Before the verdict, guilty or not guilty?
I think he's not guilty. Not guilty. That was nuts, man.
Guilty before the verdict, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Sean? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Riley?
Not guilty.
Before the verdict, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty. Nathan Goodman is not guilty.
Who's Bernie's side?
What is?
Guilty or not guilty, John?
Oh, not guilty. Guilty. Shut up.
All right, court's back in session. Yeah, good. All right. The indictment is a charge of manslaughter. In this case, manslaughter is unnecessary or accidental killing as a result of culpable negligence. Sorry, I can't read. But there you go. Jury. Bailiff, would you get me their verdict, please? In the case of Nathan Goodman versus State of Mississippi, we the jury find the defendant not guilty.
Now, hold on now. Hey, hold on.
He's gotta finish.
Both sides did a very good job. We found not guilty because y'all were giving prosecution very limited information. If it was a real trial, like we're a lot older, but you would have been given cell phone records, you would have been given a whole lot more crash scene information, but just based on what was given to us.
And how y'all proved it, like the proof of it, and like not really what we actually thought, but the proof we were given.
So in other words, what you're saying, and this is something y'all, what you're saying is you might have actually thought that the defendant's guilty, but because of the evidence that was presented, you had to come back with not guilty, which is law. You have to do that. They cannot come back with a guilty verdict if the evidence does not prove. They cannot base their verdict on what they feel or think about the defendant, okay?
And then
That's the law.
also the diagram everybody kept using. You can't base, they all want to say Miss Vivian was veering into the lane. They're all looking at the circle part where her tire tracks were skidding into the other lane. you gotta go back up the hill in the curve. She was in her lane when when she locked it up. So, and they didn't prove the part, they didn't bring this part up that, hey, he could have been straightening that curve out. And she saw him coming and have to lock her brakes up. And and both sides said that the road was on either side was a drop off. Did she veer to the left that way because the other side was a deep embankment? Just now, future reference, you could have brought that stuff up.
Yeah, the prosecution always has the hardest job.
Yes.
I told them that when they decided that's, we had prosecution. The defense has one job, and it's easy. Well, I shouldn't say easy. It is not as difficult to create a doubt as it is to create a solid proof, you did it, no doubt case.
Because in a real trial,
But y'all did a phenomenal job.
99% of the time, Nathan's not taking the stand.
Okay.
In a real trial, the defendant hardly ever takes the stand.
No, everybody gets a no. No, it's great. All right, we got to get everything back.